Ever wish you could, like, I don't know, jump in a time machine and, like, go back and see a movie being made before, it was a movie?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Well, kinda. Today we're diving into the fourth script draft of Star Wars.
Episode 4.
Right. A New Hope from 1976, before they even cast anyone.
Wow.
It's just George Lucas, pure imagination on paper.
That's so cool. And this draft, it's like the perfect snapshot, Polished enough that we get the story, but early enough that, who knows what might have changed later on.
Like you're walking onto the Death Star set, but it's all blueprints and scaffolding, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of seeing things, the way Lucas writes Tatooine, he doesn't just say desert. He puts you right there. Those two suns, the dunes.
You can feel that heat, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's like, that's visual language at its finest. Reading this, I swear I feel the sand, hear that Jawa sandcrawler crunching across the dunes.
Oh, those sand crawlers, the detail, every little bit of it. Like he built the whole thing in his head first.
Absolutely.
And speaking of Jaws, the script starts, boom, right into that classic sci-fi vibe a long time ago.
You're in it from those first words. Total space opera.
And that classic opening crawl, rebels, the Empire, stolen plans.
A weapon that can destroy planets.
Oh, yeah. And in the middle of it all, our favorite droids.
3PO and R2.
Will this never end? 3PO asks as they're getting pulled into the sandcrawler.
Little does he know.
Right. But you know what really struck me this time? How Ben Kenobi shows up.
It's old Ben, right?
Yeah, not even Obi-Wan yet. It's like even Luke doesn't fully know who this guy is.
There's a real air of mystery around him.
Like, what's his deal? It's like Lucas is playing with those classic tropes, the old mentor, the hero's journey.
Totally.
But then we've got Princess Leia. No damsel in distress here. Even in this early version, she's got fire.
Her lines just crackle. Darth Vader tries to intimidate her, and bam! She hits back with, "Don't play games with me, Your Highness."
That's our Leia.
Taking on Vader with wit.
And speaking of big personalities, there's Han Solo. He just pops off the page in this draft. That first scene with Leia.
Oh, it's gold.
You called.
You can see that Lucas is setting up this classic dynamic between them, that love-hate thing. Han's all about the reward. But then, there's that trash compactor scene. He goes back for Luke.
Wait, you mean with that Dianoga thing? That was way more intense in the script, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Lucas, he doesn't hold back. He describes this slimy, grotesque monster.
Oh.
It's a far cry from what we see in the movie.
Yeah.
The trash compactor scene, it's terrifying in the script. They're fighting for their lives.
Wow. Gives me chills just thinking about it. Okay, moving on to something a little less slimy. How about how Ben explains the Force in this draft?
Oh, it's interesting, right? It's way less about scientific religion, like in the film.
Yeah.
And a lot more mystical. An energy field created by all living things, he calls it. It binds the galaxy together.
It's almost spiritual.
Which makes sense. It was the late 70s, and Eastern philosophy was having a moment. Lucas was tapping into that.
Makes sense. And speaking of tapping into something powerful, the trench run.
Huh?
Just reading the description, you're right there in the action. You can practically hear the X-Wings, the laser blasts.
It's pure adrenaline.
Mm.
But one thing I noticed is the sequence of events. It's not quite the same as the movie.
Really?
Like, Luke loses his targeting computer much earlier, so he has to use the Force to make those shots.
Interesting. I wonder why Lucas changed it. Maybe to amp up the tension.
Could be. Or maybe it was practical, something about the special effects back then.
Yeah, good point.
It just shows you, even someone like Lucas, he's making changes, collaborating all the way through. Filmmaking is a process.
Absolutely. And sometimes those little changes, they can change how you see the whole thing, like Leia's message to Obi-Wan, for example.
Oh, right.
It's different here,
Yeah.
more urgent.
How so?
She says, "I regret that I am unable to present my father's request to you in person, but my ship has fallen under attack."
Oh, wow. So it's not just a simple message.
Right. She's in the thick of it. And speaking of changes, Han, he is way more cynical in this version, like seriously focused on the money.
Yeah.
He actually tells Leia straight up, "Look, I ain't in this for your revolution, and I'm not in it for you, princess. I expect to be well paid. I'm in it for the money."
Wow. Harsh.
Right. Makes you wonder if he'd actually come back in the end.
Exactly. You appreciate those layers they added to his character later on.
It's like comparing two paintings of the same thing, both amazing, both telling the same story, but with these little differences that change how you see it.
Exactly. And that's why diving into the script is so fascinating. You see these iconic characters, these stories we think we know, in a whole new light. You get a peek into how Lucas took these classic tropes, the scoundrel, the princess, the wise old master, and made them his own. It's like watching him work, taking these familiar ideas, these characters, and making them into Star Wars.
Yeah, like remixing a classic song. Speaking of which, remember that what if we were talking about? What if Han hadn't shown up to save Luke in the trench run?
Oh, man. That changes everything, doesn't it? Could Luke have used the Force? Would the Death Star have,
Destroyed the rebel base.
Exactly. Makes you think about Han's role in all this. He's important, right?
Totally. From cynical smuggler to, well, Han Solo. The galaxy's favorite rogue. And speaking of, did you notice how much Lucas loves writing for 3PO? Half his lines are just comedy gold.
It's true. Even when stormtroopers are shooting at him, he gets a good line in.
That's Star Wars for you. That mix of, humor and real stakes.
It's perfect.
Okay, before we spend the whole time on 3PO's best lines, there's one more big difference. The ending.
Oh, right. The medal ceremony.
In the script, it's not just on Yavin 4. It's a whole parade. Through the streets, like they liberated a planet. Can you imagine what Lucas was picturing?
Oh, wow. The scale of it. The crowds.
Right. It makes the victory feel even bigger. Not just for the rebels, but for, everything.
Exactly. Hope for the whole galaxy.
It's really something.
And it reminds you, even with all the changes, the revisions, the heart of it, that hope, it was always there.
Yeah.
From the beginning. And that's the magic of these deep dives, right? It's not just a script. It's like seeing the movie being born.
Totally. Seeing how these ideas, this story became, Star Wars.
Exactly. Yeah. And in this case, it's a front row seat to watch a master storyteller at work.
Yeah.
Creating a galaxy far, far away.
It makes you think about all the work, all the choices that go into making something like this. It's not just lightsabers and spaceships.
No, not at all. It's the story.
Exactly. And that's what I hope everyone listening, takes away from this. The next time you watch A New Hope, remember the script, that parade, Leia's lines, even Han at his most cynical.
It's like you get to peek behind the curtain.
Right. You see those choices, the raw creativity, that became Star Wars.
It changes how you see it. All those packs they could have taken.
But that heart of Star Wars, the adventure, the hope.
Always there.
From the very beginning.
Words on a page, sparking a whole galaxy. It's amazing.
It really is. Well said. May the Force be with you, and with your next deep dive.